All right. Well, we're not in our Answers in Genesis book. We decided to finish the book of Daniel. So you'll have to follow along in your Bibles. We'll pick back up, I guess, once we get through Daniel. So today we're going to start Daniel chapter 7. Who here read it before class? Yes, we're going back in time a little bit in the book of Daniel before the Medes and Persians took over in the 5 years or so that Belshazzar was ruling. So I'll read all of Daniel chapter 7, and then we'll start going into it line by line. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven were stirring up the great sea. And the four beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And the mind of a man was given it. And behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And it was told, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and behold, another like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little horn, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. And I looked because of the sound of the great word that the horn was speaking. And as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed, and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beast, their dominion was taken away, but their lives prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like the Son of Man, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall rise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever. Then I desired to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze. and which devoured and broke into pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. And about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, and before which 3 of them fell. The horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things, and that seemed greater than its companions. As I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them, until the Ancient of Days came. And judgment was given for the saints of the Most High. And the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, as for the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms. It shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and he shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law. And they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole earth shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Here is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. So if you're going to say an overarching theme of chapter 7 is what? The easiest thing to take away from it all. God wins in the end.
I didn't know better. I think we're reading Revelations for a second.
We are. Daniel and Revelation are sister books. Daniel's sealed up. Revelation unseals a lot of what Daniel sealed. So why I always tell people don't go and read Revelation if you haven't read Daniel, because it gets even more confusing. But then trying to understand Daniel to read Revelation, you have to understand Ezekiel, the valley of the dry bones, and you have to understand Isaiah and all the prophecies in it. The beasts, well, it tells us in chapter 7 what the beasts are. They're kings and kingdoms. No. You don't understand why they what? They're not beasts. The beasts are a representation of that kingdom. Yeah. Oh, there would be, to tell you next is going to come Rome, and then is going to come this. And if he named them by name, it'd be very easy for us. But it wouldn't help the Jewish people because they wouldn't have known them. So we have 4 beasts in Daniel's dream. What else did we have 4 of in the book of Daniel? Think back to Daniel chapter 2. What was in Daniel chapter 2? The statue. Had 4 different sections, which was laid out for us. The head of gold is, or was now, Babylon. The chest of silver, the Medes and the Persians. The stomach and thighs of brass. I think it's Daniel chapter 8 that tells us who that is. Greece. The legs of iron does not tell us. General conception is Rome. And then the feet of iron mixed with clay that do not meld together. And then the 10 toes. So, most people read the prophecy in Daniel 7 the same way. What was Babylon known as? Ezekiel even calls it out. Calls Nebuchadnezzar the great lion that moves with eagle's wings. Don't ask me where it's at in Ezekiel, but it's in Ezekiel. So they tie the lion with the wings as the Babylonian Empire. Which kind of fits? It's hard to argue. I will, but it's hard. The beast, wings are plucked off, and it's given the mind of a man. What happened to Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 4? He turned into a beast until his mind was given back to him, and he praised God and was given back the mind of a man. So they tie that, Daniel 7, to Nebuchadnezzar. Then they go on, the Medes and the Persians, they tie to the bear, which makes sense, because the bear is raised up on one side. So what's that tell you about the bear? It has two sides. I'm not getting complicated yet. One side is greater than the other. In the Medes and Persians, which one was the great empire and which one was the lesser? The Persians were great. The Medes were added to them. They weren't nowhere near as powerful as the Persians. The three ribs. General consensus is the three kingdoms it conquered. What are three great kingdoms concerning the nation of Israel before the Medes and the Persians? Babylon's the first, the closest. Which one conquered the north before Babylon conquered Jerusalem? The Assyrian Empire. They're the ones that wiped out the whole north before Babylon wipes them out. Who's the great one that starts off Israel? The giant empire where they're slaves for 400 years. Egypt. The Medes and Persians conquered all of those lands. So that would be the three ribs in the mouth according to that interpretation. Next is the leopard with 4 heads and 4 wings. Leopard is what? One of the fastest animals on the earth. The wings give it even more speed. The 4 heads we'll get to in a minute. So, what empire conquered the world in the greatest speed? Greece. Alexander the Great. The 4 heads go to his 4 generals. Though it's a bit of a stretch, but it does in this interpretation. But he moved over the land faster than anybody else and conquered the whole known world by the time he turned 30. With very great speed. The last one, all the pictures are different. But there's your first one. The lion with the wings of an eagle. Second one, the bear raised up on one side. Third one, the leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. And the fifth one, usually depicted like a dragon or a dinosaur. But why a dragon? Revelation 13. When we talk about Daniel and Revelation tied together, you'll see it depicted as a dragon most of the time because of Revelation 13. Now here's my problem with that whole layout. When is Daniel getting this vision? What's verse 1 say? Belshazzar is the first king of Babylon? No. He's what? The very last. So why is Daniel getting a futuristic dream about the kingdoms that are going to come, about an empire that is years away from falling, and making it the first beast? That doesn't make sense to me. So I take issue with that first interpretation. But, like I said, we'll deal with it verse by verse. So, the first year of Belshazzar, so we're at the end of the Babylonian Empire. In less than 7 years, they will be destroyed, and the Medes and Persians will take over. Daniel gets a dream in his head, wrote it down. Verse 2, Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by the night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. When the Bible talks about the great sea, what's the great sea? It's usually linked to the Mediterranean, but that's not usually what they're talking about. The Gentile nations, they're always known as the Great Sea. The violence and turbulence that comes out of them and destroys the nation of Israel. What's that? Technically, usually not a sea. It's everything that comes against. That's why when Revelation talks about the new heaven and new earth, it says there will be no sea. We'll have large bodies of water in the new heaven and new earth, but there will be no Gentile nations conspiring to kill God's people. The sea will be destroyed. All the violence and the turbulence and the hatred and all that. No. So when it says great sea, it means one or two things. Either, like she said, the Mediterranean Sea, because that was their great sea, or the nations around Israel. I tend to think this one's the nations around Israel, because who's getting stirred up and what are we going in to see? We're not going in to see tsunamis and earthquakes, and we're seeing nations and kingdoms rising up. So the stirring of the great sea is the enemies of Israel. One thing when I tell people that are starting to look into prophecy, forget about America. We all want to write ourselves in there like we're important. Everything in the Bible is centered around what piece of land? It's always Israel. The greatest nation to ever rule was Babylon, according to God, the head of gold. They didn't own America. The land they covered was where? It's in the Middle East. They got taken over by the second greatest, the Medes and Persian. What area did they rule? The Middle East. And then Greece took them over. What did they rule? The Middle East. They were from Turkey mostly. They did have the Greek island, but they went from there through the Middle East. Then Rome. Same thing. They ruled the Middle East. Yep. And Rome starts to go further north than Greece and all that did, but it's still centered around the Middle East. So when you see all these prophecies about kingdoms and kings and everything rising, it's not Donald Trump in America. It's something over there. It's not here. Why isn't America mentioned? Because we're not important. Yeah, they're focused. God's focused is on that area. Every kingdom that he talks about is that area. Will we have something to do with the end times? Maybe, if we're still here. But we're not the major players. Gog and Magog. I'm not going to get into them. But the Middle East will be the important ones. Which it always has been. Every conflict. Yep. Most of the world's torment and turmoil comes from two bloodlines. And they go all the way back to Abraham with his two sons. And they will fight till the end. What's that? Thousands and thousands of years. You think we have a long way to go? They started at Abraham. It's been 4,000 years that they've been butting heads. So, you'll notice this is the Bible I study out of on Logos, so that's why there's all the highlights. Why would I highlight the word like in every single sentence? So this lion that comes out is like what? It'll be like Babylon, but won't be Babylon. It'll be like a bear, the Medes and Persians, but won't necessarily be the Medes and Persians. It'll be like a leopard. The leopard's where you start to see the most contrast. You read history, it'll tell you that Alexander the Great died at 34, somewhere in there, in his 30s. And he died because of the terrible lifestyle that he had. He died of sexually transmitted diseases for what he did when he conquered every state. So he didn't make it out of his 30s. And then his 4 generals took over. That was the shortest period of Greek in history where there was actually 4 generals running things. Most of the time it went to 3, and it got as large as 12. So the 4 was just the initial breakup. But we'll talk more about the Greeks, I think, in chapter 8 when we talk about the ram and the goat. It'll get more into Greek. I don't think that's what he's talking about here. And then the last one is obviously the end times kingdom, which we have not seen yet. Why? Because we go from the 4th beast to who? The Ancient of Days. And his throne is set up, and the books are open. When does all that happen? At Judgment Day, at the end of the world. So there's nothing after the 4th beast but the kingdom of God. So can it be Rome? We've had tons of kingdoms since Rome. And then verse 11 and 12. Scroll it up where people can see. And I looked, and the beast was killed, and its body was destroyed, given over to be burned by fire. Sound familiar? The book of Revelation, right? When the beast is thrown into the fire and is destroyed. But what happens to the other 3 kingdoms that Daniel has a dream about? What's verse 12 say? As for the rest of their beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives prolonged for a season and a time. So do we, for a season and a time. So, do we still have Babylon? Do we still have Greece? Do we still have the Mede and Persian Empire? Well, the Babylonian was destroyed by the Medes and Persians. The Medes and Persians was destroyed by the Greece. The Romans kind of destroyed the Greek one. Now we still have remnants of all these, but they're not a country anymore. Babylon is Iran. Greek is Turkey. Istanbul was the center, the capital of Greece. I think, yeah, Istanbul. But verse 12 tells us after the beast one is destroyed, these 3 go on for a little bit. Without power, but their lives are prolonged. So that's what always makes me question this is Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. Because I just don't see how it fits. So that should give you a whole bunch of questions. So let's do questions.
What was the purpose of God giving Daniel this dream?
Same reason God gave the prophets the visions of Christ's first coming. So that we would know the times and the seasons that we're in. Daniel was given, and we'll get into it a little further, he's giving the whole history of the nation of Israel from the time he's given the vision till the end of the world. Daniel gets it all, so that they will be without excuse, just like we'll be without excuse. We lean on this popular saying of Jesus that no man knows the day or hour, so we don't even try to figure out when Christ is coming back. But yet, he held the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the ruling people to account for missing his first coming. I gave you enough to know I was coming, and you completely missed it. And if we go with no man can know the day or hour, so we don't study when Jesus is coming back, and we completely miss it, what's he going to say to us? Same thing. But people don't want to study it because it's hard. And it will cause fights because there's people that are very, like what I said there, that I don't think that that's the 4 kingdoms that Daniel's trying to tell us about because it just doesn't make sense to me. That'll start a fight because that's been believed for thousands of years, that it's those 4 kingdoms. I also usually get them when I say I don't think Rome is the iron legs of Daniel chapter 2. Because it talks about that they will crush and destroy everything from the nations before them. Rome didn't do that. Rome let you keep your God, keep your temple, worship who you wanted to, brought in Greek, all Greek speaking, didn't change the language, didn't change hardly anything but who was in power. There was a ruling power in that same area that did destroy everything while they ruled and reigned. Anybody know who that was? It was the Islamic Caliphate when they ruled Israel in the whole Middle East during the Crusades and all that. You didn't get to keep your God. You didn't get to keep your temple. You didn't get to worship. When they came in, they destroyed everything of that history and they put their own in. They still do it today. Look at England. They canceled every Christmas parade, every Christmas city this year because they didn't want to upset the Islamic people that were there. So they come in and you don't get to keep yours. They change everything. Yeah, they don't care. And don't think we're immune. They have almost the whole state. They got a stronghold in Texas where they do the exact same thing. You cannot worship Christ in front of them. I think they have a city. They have a city. Houston, I believe. Where they're beginning to be outnumbered. And then the other ones, Milwaukee? What state? Minnesota. I think it's Minnesota that they have. Yeah. First off, they believe more than Christians do. I will not take that away from them. When they become followers, they're all in. It's not, well, I don't have time for this, or I got other things to do. They are wholeheartedly all in, like we're supposed to be. They make us look bad. They're in for the wrong reasons, or they got it completely wrong, but they're all in. Where Christianity, especially here, is nowhere near all in. If anything, we might add a little bit of Jesus to one day of our week. They pray 5 times a day. Bells go off. It doesn't matter if they're working or whatever. They stop, they pray. They don't play with their religion like most Christians play with theirs. Most Christians want to live in sin and dabble in Christianity. So why do they win? They believe it. What they say they believe, they truly believe. What Christians say they believe, they don't truly believe. Not like them. Not like them. Because if I truly believe that my children and my friends and my coworkers without Christ are going to burn in hell for all eternity, why am I watching a football game? Why am I playing a video game? Why am I sitting around watching TV when they could be gone in 5 seconds? And I care so little, I'd rather do the other. So Christians say they believe, but they don't. The majority of Christians in America, they do not. Everything else ranks higher. Prove me wrong. Yeah, and that's the way God calls us to believe, but we don't listen. If there was something more important, and I'll use kids because that's usually the one that tugs the most, than your kids' eternal destiny, what is it? I got nothing. So how much time do you spend witnessing to your kids compared to how much time you spend on the TV? I'll tell you, the Muslims witness to their kids more than TV. They spend more time in the Bible than they do on TikTok, their Quran. And that's what God calls us to do. But a false religion following a false God does it better than we do. So why do they win? They believe what they say they believe. We don't. And
They pray 4 or 5 times a day. They stop their work and take a break. Now, you said you worked with some. Did they do it at work?
He did. He would
Right.
stop, and he had an exemption too, like
That's
he
right.
wouldn't get in trouble.
Mhm.
It was a religious exemption.
Yep.
He could stop, walk away from the line, could do his prayers, come back whenever he was done.
We've had some at gas stations.
Yep. I delivered,
Can't get gas.
yeah, I delivered food and stuff. And when that bell went off or trumpet went off, I had to stop working, company policy, and wait for them to finish before so I'm getting paid overtime for them to pray. Why? Because they believe it.
Christians try to do that.
They throw you out of the place.
They give us a
They crucify you. I'm saying that.
They would to the extent that they gave the Muslims at the beginning. The difference is the Muslims didn't cave. So fire us, we won't work there. Fire us, we won't work there. And all of a sudden you have, especially in the Mideast, the majority of the population all stood together. Most Christians go, I'm not going to lose my job, I'll pray later. Not, God calls me to pray, I'm going to pray now. You know, if all Christians were like Daniel and prayed 3 times a day facing Jerusalem, even to the point that he gets thrown in a lion's den for it, we would have the same freedom to stop work and pray. It's just not that important to us as it is to them. And number 2, simple mathematics, they're outbreeding us. Americans, Westerner, like United Kingdom, England, all them, we are averaged less than 1 kid per family now. They are still 5, 6 kids per family. you messed the whole average up. But as general, they're outbreeding us. So they're still having kids in sometimes double digits. Where we're fighting a declining population. We're not having kids as fast as their old people are dying off.
There's some Catholics that I know that have like 10, 13 children. They go to school with a few of them. But it's like, because they want a big family, they're like, look how many
because we've let culture train us that way.
No, they're going to school with a Catholic family that has like 13 and each.
Now, all right, when they were supposed to walk, but they have to pray, the children, they have to do that too?
Mhm.
Do they get time off of school?
Mhm.
Everything's catered around them.
As it should be. I will not argue their right to get out of school and pray, because then you argue your right to. See, Freeport, I think they still do it, but don't quote me. When my kids went, still gave 1 period a week for Christian studies. They would get to leave the school at elementary over here, cross the street and go to that church and learn the Bible. There used to be Christian clubs and all that stuff that they could go to. As soon as you start arguing against that stuff for another religion, you're fighting against yourself having it too. You can't have one and not the other.
I remember being in high school, like say, when I went through Evangel High, they would have youth programs. They'd go away for like a week or something like that. I was still able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, hey, my youth group's going out of state. I'm going with them. I'm going to use my, religious exemption to get out of school for a week. I don't think they do that.
I think they still, I think you still can, as long as you tie it to your religion or education, or religious education.
Claire's getting out of school for a week to go with Carrie, and it's exempted for religious and learning education.
Mm-hmm.
But as for the clubs, it's all after school hours, you can't do it during. And the South Buffalo no longer goes across the street. They stopped that right before COVID. And they guess they were having families that didn't think that was allowed.
There's a church in, Spring Church that has buses, kids in at lunchtime from the Apollo Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And they have, religious.
Yeah. But I guess my whole point saying, we got way off track there, but when the caliphate took over the Middle East, they did exactly what this sounds like. They wiped out everything from the past. Look at Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. When they owned it, the temple was already down and destroyed, but what did they put up in its place? They put the mosque.
There's two of them there.
Yeah.
There's two different ones there, two different names, just listening.
Yeah, there's the Dome of the Rock and the Mosque of something.
So Jerusalem is, how does that go? It's under Israel's, political jurisdiction, but the Islam temples there,
Yeah.
they can't.
They can't do much because it'll start World War III. But
But that's where the new temple will be built.
it can be. Now,
I mean, according to prophecy, is Jerusalem where it's supposed to be, the Antichrist
sit,
is supposed to be?
yes. Yes. Does it need a temple? Does it need a temple? What's it say? The man of lawlessness will sit where? In the Holy of Holies. And declare himself to be God. Doesn't say temple. So where's the Holy of Holies right now? Best I can tell, it's inside the mosque. From the pictures I've seen inside the mosque, there's this perfect cube for the Ark of the Covenant carved in the rock that's in the center of that mosque for it to sit. So that would lead you to believe that's where the Holy of Holies is on the Temple Mount. So you could sit in a mosque and do it. But what is required is sacrifices have to start daily. But for that, you don't need a temple, you need an altar, which they already have. But I do think they're going to build a temple. I just don't think it's required.
In God's house, and
I'll end with the question then. What is God's house? It's not the temple anymore. It's us. We are the house of God.
So, and just so I have a question that, so who do you, like you're saying, the lion and the bear and the leopard, who would you,
Who do I think these are?
yeah,
Yet to come.
okay, so they're,
I think these are the end time kingdoms that are going to roll. I think groups are going to come together, one like Babylon, probably from that area, one like Greek, probably from Turkey, one like, what's the other one? Medes and Persians from Persia, and these groups are going to come together. In Daniel chapter 8, when Daniel's still pondering the question, in Daniel chapter 7, he gets the next vision, and it does the sheep and the goat, the ram, the four horns, the four kingdoms that are come against the one goat that ends up being the Antichrist and the horn. I think it's telling us that maybe these kingdoms that you don't understand are yet to come. They're going to be like these kingdoms we told you in this statue, like these kingdoms that you're familiar with, Daniel, but not exactly them.
you've already said that you, don't put America in here, but I listen to different people who have different, interpretations of this, and the one said that, they believe that the lion,
England, because the lion.
the lion, and America are the wings, because we came from,
And ours is the eagle.
yeah, and ours is the eagle, and then,
Who else's was the eagle? Babylon? Rome? Eagle's very common.
and then they say the bear is,
Russia.
the leopard is China,
Yeah.
what's that's why it's so
That's why it's so hard, and that's why most places skip over top of it. Ed, will you close us in prayer?